In today's video, we're going to show you how to rebuild a Simpson pressure washer pump, specifically pump model 52004 and 52006. To start off with, we're going to show you how to replace the garden hose inlet fitting in the event that it breaks, or the high pressure outlet fitting in the event that it breaks or it strips out. On this particular model, we've got the luxury of being able to take off the handle to get it out of our way. So let's start by doing that. Now the first part we're going to try and replace is going to be the high pressure outlet. Here's our replacement part, part number 1002.2745. And to remove this part, we're going to need an Allen wrench, 8mm. It's going to fit on the inside. We're going to use our ratchet. You can see that part comes out fairly easy. Going to open up the new one. You want to make sure that you don't have a bunch of calcium or lime deposits. If you have a bunch of that in there, just try and clean that up ahead of time. Then this should screw in fairly easy. You've got the O-ring seal. No Teflon tape is needed. You should never need Teflon tape on this part as well when you're hooking up your high pressure hose, because your hose should have a gasket internally. Now we're going to put this back in here. We're going to snug that up. And once we bottom out, we're done. We don't have to reef on this or over tighten it. The O-ring gives us our seal. Now, next we're going to replace the garden hose inlet fitting, part number 1002.0671. Now first off, what we're going to want to do is remove our garden hose inlet filter. That's going to give us access to another Allen wrench fitting. This one is 10mm. So you can see this is fairly straightforward and easy. Not a complicated task. I'm pretty sure all of you can do this at home. It's got the same kind of O-ring fitting. When it tightens up, make sure you've got any debris that's in there cleaned away. You don't want any debris getting inside the pump where your garden hose water is going in. Any debris in the pump can cause problems and damage to the internal parts. Now, here's your new part. We're going to start it off by hand. I'm going to put my tool on there. Once we bottom out, that's all we got to do. I'm going to take our garden hose fitting, place it in there, and we're done with that part. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to replace the thermal relief valve on this pump. Now there's a couple reasons you might want to do that. Your thermal valve may be leaking all the time, which means it's failed. Another reason might be preventative maintenance. A thermal valve is typically designed to last about 2 years. The inside part of the thermal valve can collect calcium and lime deposits, preventing it from actuating when the temperature gets to the point where it should be opening and discharging the hot water. Most of your pumps these days are going to come with a cheaper aluminum version. This looks like brass, but it's simply an aluminum anodized color to make it look like brass. We're going to replace this with a brass version. Your brass version is less likely to get deposits of calcium and lime. Still, recommended, replace it every 2 years to prevent your pump from overheating. Part number 1001.2150. We're going to take a 15mm open-end wrench. We're going to loosen this off. Now on an older machine, this might be a little tighter. The longer they sit in the pump, the more deposits of calcium and lime will develop, kind of gluing that valve on there. I'm going to apply some Teflon tape to the threads. It's going to go back in just the same way it came out. To install this thermal valve, I'm using a 16-inch open-end wrench. Now the thermal valve does not hold back any pressure other than garden hose pressure. It's on the low pressure side of the pump, reading and sensing the temperature so that it can open up in the event the water gets too warm. There you have it. Our thermal valve is installed. In the event this pump does get too hot from water, water is going to spray out of here through a port. As cold water comes in and resets it, it'll stop spraying water. Next, we're going to replace the chemical injector on the pump. The chemical injector is your barbed fitting. It's designed to suck in chemical through a chemical hose when your pressure washer is being used with the black soap tip. It will not draw in chemical if you're using one of your regular high pressure nozzles. Now, to remove the injector, we're going to need a 13mm open-end wrench. Now, inside your injector, there is an internal O-ring, a ball, and a spring. And we want to make sure we try and catch those parts when they come out. There's our ball, and here's our spring. The spring is going to go on top of the ball in that type of manner. Now, inside, you can see there's a small O-ring inside there. The ball bearing seats against that. When it's under pressure, pushes the ball bearing down against the O-ring and creates a seal so no water will leak out. If you have water leaking out of your injector, the ball bearing is typically corroded away or the O-ring is damaged, in which case you're going to replace your chemical injector kit. Our chemical injector kit part number is 1000.6340. Assembly of the kit is as follows. I'm going to set down the ball bearing and the O-rings and the spring. First, we're going to put the O-ring around the outside. Then we're going to take the small O-ring and put it on the inside. I'm going to use a small flat screwdriver to push it down into a recessed groove that it sits into. Next, we're going to drop the ball bearing down inside the injector. Put the spring on top of it. Start screwing that in. And once we bottom out, that's all the tightening we need to do. Now, you might wonder, why would an injector wear out? A couple reasons. If you let your chemical hose stay connected and there's chemical in that hose, when you're done pressure washing, that chemical will sit inside here. Some people are using bleach through the chemical injector, as well as degreasers and other kinds of cleaners. Those cleaners left behind will corrode the inside of the injector. They will also corrode the inside of the casting of the pump. So it's always recommended to drop the end of your chemical line into a clean container of water, siphon that through before you're done using your machine and putting it away. That will ensure a longer life for your injector and avoid having to replace this. At this stage in the pump repair, we're going to replace the check valves in the pump. There's 3 underneath the high pressure valve caps, and there's 3 inside the pump head that we'll have to access by removing the head of the pump, the water section, from the oil section of the pump. But we'll start by taking these caps off while the manifold is still on the pump. We're taking a 6mm Allen head. On older pumps, these might be a little more difficult to get off, as you can develop calcium and lime deposits in the threads, which will make it a little more resistant to unthreading. The parts we're going to replace at this point are the 6 check valves, part number 1001.3300. When doing this, you want to make sure you extract all of the parts of the valve. If your valves are broken, you're going to want to make sure you remove additional parts and flush out the pump. Any leftover parts will damage any new parts you're putting in there. As you can see, the check valve has a stainless steel bottom with an O-ring around it, a plastic cage, and inside the cage we have a spring and a poppet. All 6 check valves are identical. 3 on the top, 3 on the inside. Now let's start by trying to remove the old valves. This can be a little bit of a tricky part, as the valves are pushed down inside there and the O-ring kind of helps hold it in place, and the cap sits on top of it, preventing it from moving. But while the valve is in there, it can sometimes become stuck from calcium and lime deposits as well. Now usually we'll start off by using our valve extractor tool, and if that doesn't work, we can also use a small screwdriver or dental pick. So I'm going to go down inside and try and clamp it. Not all pumps have the same amount of room, and this one does not have enough room for me to use this tool. So I'm going to use a screwdriver and I'm going to rock that valve back and forth, try and loosen it up. Then I'm going to grab a pair of needle nose pliers. There we go. We got one of them out. This one doesn't look too bad. You can see I damaged this a little bit when I was taking it out. If your pump has had some issues where it's not going into bypass, you can build up excessive heat in there, and that can cause the valve to overheat, melt, distort, and cause the plastic to come apart in the pump. Now let's see if we can get the rest of them out. Trying to dislodge them using my dental pick. I got it out. There's one more. Now in this case, I've just broken the check valve, which is good because I'm going to show you how to get the rest of that out. I'm going to try and fish out the plastic part. Okay, actually, there's a spring that was jammed in there. That might have been part of the problem. Okay, looks like the rest of it came out. It's not uncommon that you'll get this plastic piece out, but you'll leave the stainless steel part down below. It's imperative that you get the entire valve out, otherwise you won't be able to properly put in a new valve. Now we're going to use our Allen wrench to take these 3 bolts out so we can remove the head to access the other 3 valves. You can tell this pump hasn't been taken apart before because the bolts are breaking free from their original Loctite. So we didn't do a dry run on this. This is an actual pump that needs to be repaired. Now, we've got the 3 bolts off. I'm going to gently pull this and rock it off. Sliding off the pistons. Our water seals, which would normally be in the brass retainers, have stayed here. That's fine. I'm going to pull these off. When we're done with the valve kit, we'll do the seal kit. So inside there's 3 holes, and in each hole there's a check valve. These are your low pressure inlet check valves. So now I'm going to start by removing the brass retainers. Take a pair of needle nose pliers or other type of tool, grab it on the outside, turn it, and gently pull up. You'll notice that on the underside we've got a white spacer, and below that we've got our high pressure seal. I'm carefully just going underneath that seal, gently prying that out. Now you can see your seal is a chevron style cupped seal. It is important that you're going to put these back in the correct direction. They only work when installed correctly. So I've got that one out. Let's go to another retainer. There we go. A retainer with the O-ring around it, O-ring seal, and this plastic spacer. Another high pressure seal, another retainer. Now you can get a better view of our check valves. We might have more room now to use the valve pliers on these valves. Let's try it and see what happens. Oh, also we have an O-ring right here in the center. Don't lose that. Without that O-ring that seats against the face here, your pump will leak when you're done. I'm going to take my valves, and what I'm trying to do is get down on the valve and grab it like that so I can pull it up. And that's not working, so I'm going to grab a screwdriver, rocking the valve back and forth, trying to free it up. Try the needle nose pliers this time. All right, there's one. Okay, so we did break part of the valve, so we're going to go in and try and extract. There's a spring. There's another chunk. Another chunk. Now at this point I've got most of the plastic out. Here's a little poppet. Now with the remaining piece, now I can use this tool. I'm going to go down inside the hole of that valve. Now I can get a good bite on that. There we go. So you can see how the valve tool gets through there, and we're kind of clamping, trying to pull it out. Okay, we've got one more valve to go. And we're breaking another one. And now there's the poppet, and now we can get the valve tool inside the check valve. And there's the remaining of the valve. Again, don't leave that part in and try and stick another valve on top of it. It has the exact amount of space needed for only the valve to fit in there. Now, with those parts out, I'm going to go over to a garden hose and I'm going to flush this out. I want to make sure I get any loose debris, which possibly might be calcium or lime. It could also be little pieces of white plastic from the check valves. My valve body looks nice and clean, ready to accept the new check valves. Okay, so now we're going to install the check valves. We're going to want a little bit of grease. I'm using lithium grease. You can use a black grease. Just something to put on the O-rings to give it a smoother transition when trying to slide it in there, because it's a fairly tight fit. Now, I'm going to take my valve, metal side going down, drop in 1, drop in 2, drop in 3. Now I'm taking a small socket, just big enough to go over the white raised part, and I'm going to push down the valve, and you'll hear it click. And it doesn't really have any place to go. It just needs to be pushed down into that surface. Now we'll do the 3 up here. 1, 2, and our third valve. I'm going to push down. Okay, now we've got 3 valves in there. Now, before we put the valve caps back on, we're going to replace the seal kit with the new parts. Our seal kit number is 1001.9137. We're going to reuse the brass retainers, but we're going to replace the soft parts in the kit. Let's check to make sure we've got all the parts we need. Got a total of 6 seals, 3 O-rings, and 3 spacers. I'm going to take a retainer and a dental pick. I'm going to carefully remove the O-ring. I'll wipe the retainer down, removing the spacer, putting a new O-ring on, placing my spacer. Now I'll do the next 2. At this stage, we're ready to replace the unloader valve on the pump head. Part number 1001.9139. Below the unloader valve is the seat. Not all unloader valves will come with a seat. You've got a stainless steel seat with a seal and an O-ring, a castle cage, and underneath that is a ball bearing. We're going to start by taking the cap off the unloader valve. And in looking at this, I believe this unloader valve is not going to be adjusted properly. So you're going to try and mimic the same amount of threads on the new one that you've got on the old one. And we can do that after we install it. Now first we're going to take and pry up the staple clip. That's what's holding this part in place. So once that's out, we'll take a screwdriver, put it in between the coils of the spring, pry against the body of the head, and out comes the unloader valve. Now, you'll see that a lot of videos will tell you if your pump doesn't have pressure, to replace the unloader valve. That's probably the problem. And I'll tell you that it's probably not the problem. It seems like the easiest thing to replace, and it probably is, but it's usually not the culprit for why you don't have pressure. It's usually going to be valve related or seals, but not so much the unloader valve. Once you take your unloader valve out though, a way to test that is to push the pin. The pin is spring loaded. If when you push that, it's stiff and you hear it click and it breaks free, that means you had calcium and lime or sand grit inside there that was jamming the valve, preventing that from moving. That stops the valve from working properly. If you take it out and this moved freely, your unloader valve was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. Now, the problem could have been in the seat. If debris gets between the ball and the seat inside there, preventing that ball bearing from moving in the proper position, that could cause the pump to be in perpetual bypass, just allowing water to circulate around and not sending it out of the pump to give you high pressure. So let's see if we can take the old one out. We're going to try and use our valve extracting pliers again. And so we're going to kind of go down inside. There's 2 holes. We're going to try and hook those and we're going to try and pull it out. Okay, we got it out and we lost the ball bearing in the process. That's okay. So your little ball bearing sits in there. This piece goes over the top of it. And that ball has a little bit of space to move up and down in there. So I'm going to flush that out. Okay, other than some normal staining of the aluminum, everything looks good on the inside. I'm going to take my new assembly, a little bit of lubricant, maybe a little too much, but it won't hurt anything. I'm going to drop that down inside. I'm going to take something and just push it down in there. My next move is to take my new unloader valve, make sure that spring pushes, nice and springy. I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant on the O-ring. I don't want it tearing when I slide it in. I'm going to tap on this a little just to get it all the way down. It has to go in far enough so that the spring will go over the flat washer. Oh, there we go. All right, it dropped. Now I can tap my clip in. Now, to tighten this or give us more tension, and again, we want to try and be similar to the tension on this one. We want to squish that spring down. We've got the adjustment nut and then the lock nut on top to prevent it from coming loose after we've set it. So I'm going to take a 3/16 Allen wrench to go down inside the center to hold the center shaft. Then I'm going to take my 17mm and I'm going to tighten that nut. The tension setting on this will determine how much pressure your pressure washer has, but you can overdo it. You don't want to go further than what it's designed to do. It's just going to increase your trapping pressure and not your working pressure. So that looks about good there. I'm going to tighten down the lock nut. That way it can't vibrate loose. So you can see we're pretty close on the tension. And the amount of pressure that this will put out is based as well on the horsepower of the engine that this pump is connected to. At this point, we're ready to replace the seals. Now we're ready to install the water seals. There's a total of 6, but there's 3 high pressure seals and 3 low pressure seals. Your low pressure seals are much softer than your high pressure seals. They're a lot stiffer. To put in the high pressure seals, you're going to want to go groove face down, and you can see that the seal has kind of a lip on it. That lip is kind of what gives it pressure against the sidewall to help contain the pressure. We're going to go down in the hole at a slight angle, and we're just going to push that lip in. Sometimes you can use a small screwdriver to just push that lip in a little bit and then push the seal down. And once that lip is underneath there, we can push the seal the rest of the way in. And our seal's in place. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our white spacer. We're going to put it directly on top of the high pressure seal. There's a little groove for that to fit in. Now before we put these guys in, I'm going to apply a little bit of lubrication on the outside ring. And I can set that in there. Now our 3 low pressure seals. Again, flat side is going to face up. We're going to go down at an angle. A little easier to push in because they're softer. All right. No need to apply any sealant to these parts. Water is going to lubricate your pump when it's in operation. You don't need grease or any lubricant on the pistons. Before we put the head back on, let's take a look at the pistons. They are a stainless steel piston, highly resistant to scratching. In the event you see any type of a scratching on this, that could be the cause of water seals failing. If you have severe scratching on these and you put a new seal kit on, your seals may not last very long as it will erode away the seal and cause it to leak water. So at this point, we're going to go and put our head back on. We're going to install our 3 Allen head bolts. Now I've got them finger tight. I'm going to use my ratchet to snug it up some. The tightness on this does not seal the pump. The seals around the piston are what hold back the pressure. So I just go a little snug. Okay, that part's done. Now we can take our 3 valve caps. I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant around the O-ring. Get to the bottom, a little snug. I've never used a torque wrench when I've been doing this type of repair. Just want to put a little push on it. They're aluminum, so you don't want to over torque it. Additional tightening of this is not going to help the pump on the bolts or the caps. Now at this point, we've rebuilt the pump. We're going to hook it up to a garden hose and pressure hose, and we're going to see how it does. All right, we've just rebuilt the pump. Now we're going to hook up everything and give it a test. I'm going to start by adding my garden hose quick disconnect. I highly recommend having this for any garden hose attachment you have, but specifically for your pressure washer, because oftentimes it's just kind of hard to get in here and tighten those fittings up. So with this, we can simply slide this back and we're locked in place. I'm going to add my quick disconnect adapter to the pump. I've already got the other end on my hose, so I can simply lock it in place. I'm going to hook it up. I've got the same quick disconnect adapter here. I'm going to hook it up to my gun with my pressure gauge so we can see what we're doing. All right, now we're ready to test it and see what we got. Pump is working correctly. We're not leaking from the pump other than the garden hose connection, and we're trapping correctly. Pump is working just like it should. Now, if you don't want to go through all that and rebuild that pump, I'm going to show you another option. Now, you've just watched us rebuild the pump head. In the event you don't want to go through all that work, another option is to just replace it with a complete pump head. New seals, new valves, unloader valve already adjusted, 3 bolts, and you're done. Part number is 1002.2627. Let's show you how we do it. We've got our pump head, seals are already installed, all new valves. We've got 3 new bolts and 3 spacer washers. Let's loosen up the Allen heads. Now your new head is going to come with 3 new stainless steel protective spacers that are in the position right here. These can be fairly difficult to get out. All they do is give you a separation between the oil seal behind here and the water seal to prevent water from getting into there if these seals fail. If these do not easily come out, simply leave them there, set these aside. Now we can install our new pump head. 3 new bolts. You can either try and rebuild this pump head, or you can buy a new pump head and install it in less than a minute. You've got choices. Have fun.